We live in a world where taking pictures such as selfies is a very common way to show who we are. People use their phones nowadays with built-in cameras, and those phones have the camera lens on both sides of the device, which allows the user to maneuver between the pictures. A lot of people use their phones to take the pictures of anything. I mean anything starting from a selfie to finishing on trip pictures. However, I always had an interest in taking pictures myself by using a digital camera. My dad owned an old Canon camera, and he carried that camera everywhere we went to take pictures. I remember we had to take a perfect pose because he didn't want to waste the film frame, otherwise the picture would become blurry. He used that camera until the digital cameras came out. Because I always liked to take pictures, I developed a hobby in photography. I take pictures of my friends and family, but I also take the pictures of professional photos such as teens at schools. I see a lot of people using the digital camera, and I wonder if anyone know the history of photography. The history of camera may go as far as the prehistoric times, and the very early first camera was called camera obscura, and is found in Chinese writings called Mozai, dated 4th century before Christ. The camera obscura was mainly used to study optics and astronomy, especially to safely watch solar eclipse without damaging the eye. Another picture that I have found was called View from the Window at La Gra, and it's the very first earliest surviving camera photography. Nichifor Nitzsche, who's the author, he managed to fix an image that was captured with a camera, which took about 8 hours to several days to expose the image. After the very long exposure in the camera, the bitumen, which was a plate which the picture would be created on, was sufficiently hardened in proportion to its exposure to light that the unhardened part could be removed with a solvent. Another picture that I have found was the portrait of Dorothy Draper 1840, made by her brother William Draper, and you can tell how hard it was to sit still without smiling because of the long exposure of 8 hours, as opposed to a few seconds with the digital camera next to it. Another comparison of two eras is right here, and the difference between those pictures is astonishing. Back in 1800s, the long exposure meant that the baby was moving, that's why it's very blurry. Today, the digital cameras can catch a glimpse of hair brushed by the wind. I found an advertisement of a Kodak camera founded by George Eastman and Harry Strong in 1888. The company's great tagline was called Kodak Moment, and it was lexicon to describe a personal event that was demanded to be recorded for prosperity. Everyone around wanted to have a box that took pictures. The first model of the Kodak camera took about 100 pictures that were round, 2.5 inches in diameter, and it had a fixed focus. Its invention practically marked the advent of amateur photography. The roll film was used in the first model of Kodak camera, and it became the disposable camera. I used one of those in the past, and it was a lot of fun, but I was unable to take the results until the film was developed. Eventually, the Kodak company filed for bankruptcy around 2012 because of the increased demand in digital photography. A digital photography is a form of photography that uses camera containing a rise of electronic photodetectors to capture image focused by a lens, as opposed to the film. Currently, anyone can buy a digital camera, memory card, and shoot pictures, transfer to the computer, and then post on social media. Here are a few words on how to take a great photo. Buy a camera or rent it. There is an availability to rent cameras everywhere. Most of the people will shoot in the auto mode, meaning the camera will work for you. But if you really want to get some fun, you should be using the manual mode. There are 3 different aspects in taking the good picture. It includes the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. The shutter speed is the length of the time a camera shutter is open to expose the light into the camera sensor. It is measured in fractions of a second. Aperture is a hole within a lens through which the light travels into the camera body. The larger the hole, the more light passes to the camera sensor. The aperture controls the depth of field, which is the portion of the scene that appears to be sharp, and it's expressed in f-stops, meaning f numbers, f2, f4, f8. ISO is a way to brighten up the photos. It works in a favor when you can't use a longer shutter speed or a wider aperture. It's measured in numbers, where the lower number represents a darker image and the higher number creates the brighter visibility. For example, 100, 200, 800. So how do you put these three together? When a lot of light enters the camera, the light gets blocked. The camera sensor would need the more light to collect the light. It means that the shutter speed needs to stay open a little longer. With small lens aperture, the opening would need more time for the sensor. And again, to get the picture properly exposed so that it's not too bright or too dark, those three components have to be in work. Another good pointer is to get the best picture, to take your camera at 8 o'clock in the morning until 11, before the sun is at the highest point in the sky, or early evening between 4 and 6. So to get you started, get your camera settings down to 3.5 aperture, 125 shutter speed, and 100 ISO in a manual mode. I personally use the manual mode because it's a lot of fun trying to take the picture by using those three components. I hope you enjoy it.